So here's a huge question for you. Are the skills that make a manager great in, say, Silicon Valley, the exact same ones that work in a place like China? We're going to dig into some pretty fascinating research to see if we can find an answer. I want you to think for a second about the best boss you've ever had. Seriously, what was it about them? Were they a genius strategist? Or maybe they were just an incredible people person? Or were they just flat out the best person in the room at the actual job? That's really the core question we're exploring.
And here's where it gets complicated. Because, most of the management books we read, the big MBA programs, the famous leadership gurus, pretty much all of that comes from a Western perspective. So what happens when you try to apply those ideas in a totally different cultural and economic playground, like the fast-paced world of small and medium-sized businesses in China? Do the rules still apply?
So how do we figure this out? Well, we're not just going to guess. We're actually going to look at the hard data from a very specific study. And this is where we get our answers. This research dives deep into whether that classic, almost textbook model of management skills really holds up for managers in China's high-tech, small and medium-sized enterprises, or SMEs as you'll see them called. Okay, so before we jump into the findings, we need to get on the same page. Let's break down the 3 core skills the researchers use to measure what makes a manager effective. First up, you've got technical skill. This one's pretty simple. It's all about knowing your stuff. If you're managing a team of software developers, it's knowing how to code. If you're managing chefs, you'd better understand what's happening in the kitchen. It's the nitty-gritty how-to.
Next is human skill. This is probably what you think of when you hear the word management. It's communication, it's empathy, it's motivating your team. Can you get everyone to row in the same direction and not hate doing it? Basically, it's all about people skills.
And rounding out the trio, we have conceptual skill. This is the 30,000-foot view. It's about seeing the big picture, understanding how your team's little piece of the puzzle fits into the entire company's strategy, and thinking about what's coming down the pike, not just next quarter, but next year.
Okay, you got those 3 in your head? Technical, human, and conceptual? With that framework in mind, let's take a look at what the researchers actually did.
They went out and surveyed more than 800 managers working in these high-tech SMEs in China. And these aren't your massive state-run corporations. Think of them as the smaller, more agile companies that are really driving innovation. The goal was to see how these 3 skills ranked and what other things, like experience or gender, might change the equation.
And let me tell you, the results were, well, they weren't exactly what you'd learn in a typical American business school. This is where it gets really, really interesting.
So I want you to make a quick guess. Out of those 3, technical, human, and conceptual, which one do you think turned out to be the most important for these managers? Lock in your answer.
All right, here we go. Let's see how you did. Coming in at number 3, the least critical skill according to this data was conceptual skill, that big picture strategic thinking. Right in the middle, at number 2, we have human skill, the people skills, which means the number 1 spot goes to...
Yup, technical skill. By a pretty wide margin, the single most important skill for a manager in this environment was simply being an expert at the hands-on, practical work of their team.
So what's going on here? Why is technical ability king? Well, the researchers suggest a pretty logical reason. In a lot of these companies, you don't get promoted because of some grand 5-year plan you wrote. You get promoted because you were the best engineer, the best analyst, the best person at actually doing the work. Your authority comes directly from your proven expertise.
But the study didn't just stop at that ranking. It also dug into how different demographic factors play a role, which adds even more layers to the story. No huge surprise here. Experience matters. A lot. The data shows that once managers hit that sweet spot of 6 to 10 years of experience, they see a big jump across the board. But interestingly, after 11 years, it's the technical and human skills that really peak.
Now, when they looked at gender, things got pretty nuanced. For technical skills and human skills, there was basically no difference between male and female managers. But when it came to conceptual skills, that big picture thinking, male managers scored significantly higher.
So why is that? The researchers themselves point to a possible glass ceiling. The thinking is, if women aren't getting the same chances to climb to the highest executive levels, they simply don't get the opportunity to develop and practice those top-level strategic skills.
One finding that was probably a bit more predictable was about education. The data showed a clear, straight line. The more formal education a manager had, the higher they scored in all 3 skill areas. It made a difference across the board.
Okay, so we've waded through a ton of data here. Let's zoom back out and ask the big question. So what? Why does any of this matter? Well, the biggest lesson is that management is not a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. This study is a powerful reminder that in the unique environment of Chinese high-tech SMEs, being a technical master is how you earn your stripes. It shows us that relationships and practical skills can sometimes count for a lot more than a grand vision. And for any company trying to operate globally, it's proof that you absolutely have to understand the local context if you want to build leaders who can actually succeed.
And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. This whole thing was about China, sure, but the lesson is universal. I want you to think about your own workplace. What really gets rewarded? Who gets ahead? Is it the person with the most technical knowledge, the best people skills, or the biggest ideas? Because the answer to that question tells you an awful lot about the culture you live in every single day.